Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn, and thanks for joining me on this episode where we get to dive into a topic that we haven't discussed much yet, and that is angels. And for that, I have a guest on, Carrie Magalski, who is a Catholic author and just deep in the Catholic faith for the past couple of decades, at least. I'm from starting off in radio to writing. And also, I've had the pleasure of getting a copy and reading her book, Heaven's Angels, which we will discuss in just a few moments. Thank you, Carrie, for joining me.
Well, thank you for Christine for having me, and good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning's going well.
I've had coffee, so it's good.
Yeah, good too. Me too. Started early.
So, Carrie, I just gave a very brief introduction. If you can introduce yourself to the audience in a little more detail.
Oh, well, thank you. So I started off, my interest in angels started, which we're showing my age here, but about 25 years ago, when I started having my own children, and I realized that there wasn't, much of role models out there that were tangible and true that children can look up to. So I really, said, well, here God gave us all these, true heroes. Why don't we learn more about them and start presenting them to the kids so they can have true role models? So it really, that kind of started my spark of my research over the years, but I was very blessed. I always worked, in the Catholic community. I worked in Catholic radio, for many years for St. Gabriel Catholic Radio in Columbus, Ohio, which was an EWTN affiliate. And we were a really small radio station in the beginning, so we wore many hats. And I did everything with the station from, PR, community outreach, donor manager, to helping to produce local spotlight shows and interviews and all kinds of fun things. It was probably one of my most exciting times, and really built a family community with the Catholic community in Columbus, and then moved on to career development for university. I managed the internships and employer relations for Ohio Dominican University. So kind of kept with the youth and the young adults, and also my work in youth ministry at the time kind of helped with a lot of those kind of issues that I saw that the younger generation was going through, and helped me with my own children. So I had 4 children, and just all my work I tried to kind of bring into my household and really, live the day-to-day of being a good mom without going too crazy type of thing.
But heroic in itself.
Yeah. But the funny thing was that with Heaven's Angels, it took years. I've always been writing about angels, and wrote a fictitious novel for children. And at one point, when I was working with the station, I was very close with our university chaplain, and he was a Dominican priest, Father Blau, and realized that, I need to kind of get to the foundation of the angelic realms and the hierarchies. And I knew a lot about St. Thomas Aquinas and the Summa, but it was really a challenge to even get through a couple pages of it. And I said, wouldn't it be really neat to just try to, interpret and put the words of St. Thomas Aquinas into everyday, layman's terms, so that we could all use it in our lives and understand what he's talking about. So that started my journey with Heaven's Angels. And then the whole the most, amazing part of that story, which we'll get to in a minute, but was Donna Gelsinger and how that partnership happened with her son, Jesse Gelsinger, and the licensing group, because in the book, Heaven's Angels, it's all of her artwork that kind of bring the words to life, in the mind of the beholder. So
yeah, the artwork is very nice that goes along with all this.
Mm-hmm.
As I was going through, I showed some of the pictures to my kids, and it's just captivating. But for Thomas Aquinas, I totally, I'm not. My mind doesn't work as easily in that realm. My husband, my husband loves it. He picked Thomas Aquinas as his confirmation saint.
Really?
He's just a Thomist, he gets it and I don't. So I'm very lucky in that if I have any questions, I can just have him interpret it for me because I can't. It's very heavy to go through. So the fact that you used, one of the foremost intellectual minds of the Catholic tradition to back up, this isn't just like a fun fairy tale story. You can get to all this stuff with deep armchair thinking and philosophy. So the angels aren't just some cute idea.
Correct. And that's where, it was funny because going back, it kind of like the connections that kind of God is weaving in your life makes sense later on. But I graduated from St. Thomas Aquinas High School. So when I started researching, I'm like, you think he's trying to tell me something here? I completely forgot about that. And then I remember my pastor friend, Father Bob, he's like, you really are Dominican, because if you graduated from the high school, you're delving into somebody's trying to tell you something. So I look at it more of like briefly skimming over what St. Thomas was trying to say. And we used to do, I worked with the youth ministry, and with Mike Barone was just this amazing mastermind. He's a great friend of mine, but he started this Dead Theologian Society, is DTS, and it was these different chapters across the world where the youth go in and they study the lives of the different saints. And one of the things that stuck out to me when we would teach about St. Thomas Aquinas to the students and the youth were that he spent his whole life studying, and he was a doctor of the church, and he, had all these, he's just an amazing scholar. And then at the end of his life, he had a revelation, and God showed him a bit, just a brief glimpse of the heavenly realm. And he put down his pen and he said, everything I've written is hogwash. I cannot put into words anymore. And I said, okay, that's for me. Like, that one part of it made it okay for me to even try to skim and briefly, skim his words and see what he's trying to say.
I know. Yeah. What a powerful story of what all the work we do here is nothing compared.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard that. My husband had told me that story. I was like, man, well, at least I'm happy he got that glimpse, although I hope it didn't completely just demolish his.
No, I just think words, it was like a message for us that words, we cannot put into words the glory of God and what he has in store for us. It's just, those are finite, he's infinite, and just even to try to capture and then relay, to others what the magnificent, infinite divine wisdom of the heavenly realm and our Lord and what he has in store. It's just, it's a lot. So if we could even try to, tone it down and hone it in to make it understandable and relatable, and how we can take all of this and live our lives fully. I think that's, we're all on this journey, and we just got to try our best. And when we fall off, we get back up and just keep walking in hope. So
that's right. And we have angels to help us.
Yes.
So, I'm pretty new to the faith. As I said, I only converted I was spiritual, but not religious, and then atheist. And then, so very far away from being a Christian until the end of 2017. And then wasn't a Catholic until a while later. So I didn't even know that there were different realms the hierarchy of angels. I didn't even know that existed. I've learned that a little bit over time, but I don't know if, maybe cradle Catholics just have this knowledge about angels inherently. I'm not sure. But if you, we can talk about the book, but then along the way, talk about the different types of angels. That would be awesome.
Okay. So I guess the best way to describe it, what St. Thomas is trying to say is, if we can imagine it almost be like a military hierarchy, right? Where you have God, he's at the top of the throne, and he gives us these messengers. The angelic realm is more of like you have material and then you have spiritual. The spiritual is kind of the infinite ways that God helps and assists us, but also assists creation, right? So I guess the most resounding thing was when we're talking to our kids about like the stars in the sky. Well, the stars are they're finite, but they keep going. And there's actually, like when I was doing my research, when we say, there's an angel holding up that star in the sky, and you have that image that we share with our children, there's truth in that, right? So because the angelic realm that keeps the finite universe going it's all divinely orchestrated by God. So, and it's the way that he keeps things in order. So when you have, that you have the hierarchy, you have God is in his throne. There's 3 different hierarchies, and then in each hierarchy, there's a different choir. So they break it down to the first hierarchy. You have your seraphim, your cherubim, and your throne. Each have a different office and different kind of tasks or responsibilities that they carry out. The second hierarchy would be the dominions, the virtues, and the powers. And it's interesting because even with the hierarchies, the first hierarchy, their main concern is just kind of singing praise and glorifying and worshiping God. And then they break it down further where the second hierarchy, their main offices and kind of responsibilities of what they do, it has to do with the universe and creation. And then you have the third hierarchy that God gives us, which is just deals with mankind, right? And the human and us and humans. So there's to help us. So you have the principles, the archangels, and the angels. So as you're kind of like breaking it down, just to give you some background too, is I went to school in Salem at Salem State University in Salem, Massachusetts, which is the witch city capital of wherever, right? Truly, truly is. I was really subjected to the New Age, faith and New Age thought and Wicca and all of that. And the more I learned the difference between kind of these, when you're dealing with the angelic realm, you have, you have light and dark, good and bad. But it came to me like, who knows about, about your, okay. Like who would know the most about God more than almost his enemy, right? So when I started learning about like how the difference between some of these New Age thoughts and how the pagan thoughts were kind of talking about the angelic realms, all the glory was going back to the earth, right? The worship was going back to the earth. The worship was going back to the angels, right? And it was very truthful It's very truthful words and philosophies, but the source is different. The source is very different. The glory does not go back to God and the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. It turns back
from creature to creature.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where my faith got real, because I said, I really realized as I was living in kind of this whole, I needed to know my Catholic faith in order to not get swayed and swept up. And the Blessed Mother, I prayed my rosary every day. I would just ask for wisdom. I would ask for discernment, because I knew that Satan can do a lot of things, and he can use the words that feel good, feel like they're coming from God, but it's deception because it goes towards him. So that's kind of like the background of even why I felt convicted into just learning things, because I needed it to innately, to the truth to resound within me, as I was kind of walking my path. And that was before I had children. I realized, oh my God, we have a bigger responsibility now,
Yeah. For some reason, that reminds me, years ago, I think I was in 7th grade. I was playing on a Ouija board with a friend of mine. And we were just so in awe that the Ouija board told us, like, there was, I don't know how, spirits in the room with us. I can't remember. There was a number of spirits, whatever. And it wasn't until I became Catholic that I even thought, I was like, we didn't ever stop to ask if those were good spirits or not, which they wouldn't have been because it was a Ouija board. But we were just so taken up with this concept, which is there are angels among us, but it was in a very perverted sense. And it took, a couple of decades for me to even question that, because this New Age stuff is, the culture is steeped in it. So it's kind of hard to parse out. It sounds much cooler than a guardian angel, I guess, or can.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you can imagine that we're kind of behind the veil, right? So we're like, as humans and as, physical beings, there's a veil, and behind that veil, there's the whole spiritual world going on, right? And so there's a battle. And when you open up and even start delving into that world, that's why you have to have your firm faith and beliefs. That's why even when I started writing about the angels at the end of my book, I put all of my resources, and all my resources were from the Catechism, the Summa, the Holy Scripture, and tradition with with our faith, because you delving into that world don't know it's real. I mean, if you hear some of the stories, like with exorcists in our church and the priests that's their main mission, it's not a game, it's not a toy, these are not things to meddle with, because it's real to them. We're just their tools, kind of, if you look at it that way. As far as like the spiritual realm, we're in a constant battle. They're in a constant battle for our souls. And so we need to be walking in faith, walking in grace, and protecting and knowing the source before you kind of step out and delve into things. And on the flip side of that, I mean, the beauty in it is when you start coming close to your guardian angels and really understanding that we're not walking alone. God gave, the angelic realms for us with our angels and archangels, and to protect us and guide us. You start seeing it happen more and more. And I like to call these like God incidences in our lives, because when you start paying attention to that, it expounds, and the amount of help that we can achieve, it's amazing. And there is a lot of things in your life. And when we look at like the Bible, and I think of the story of Elijah, when we see help going on in our life from the spiritual realm, it's not like big explosion of God is helping you and you're going to notice. It's in the whisper of the wind, right? It's in the small things as we go through on a daily basis. That's how God speaks to us. That's how the angelic realm works for us. It's for us seeing it. It's in the tiny things, that kind of confirm and give us those convictions in our heart and resonates with our soul that, yes, this is truth. Right. And that's where, yeah.
So the battle's raging behind the veil, but we're only, what we hear is not fireworks and necessarily. Correct. It could be, but it's not something we should.
It could be. Right. But that's not on a daily basis that we'll probably see that, because otherwise I don't think we could walk the path as sanely as we're walking it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. And God also, he wants to give us a choice to come to him. And if everything is very obvious that this is happening all the time, it's, we're almost forced to believe then.
Right.
It's not quite the same as having a free will choice.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, even as you kind of, and one of the biggest purpose that I wanted with this book is to kind of spark other people to, okay, start doing some research. Here's some tools. It's a beautiful story. And it's something that, you can read to your children, your grandchildren, and I also work, I work for an elder care community. I'm the director of marketing with them, and the seniors, they love having book clubs and learning about the angels. And they use this as part of their Bible study. They do angel studies because it resonates. And no matter what age you are, how old you are, it's, things in their life will start making more sense when they see how they had help along the way, when we get to a certain age. So that was like another thing, is just putting the resources down so that you can do your own research and then see kind of how, because once we know like how the angelic realm works and how present they are in our lives, we can recognize it, more.
Sure.
We touched base before on like the great battle. We were talking about the different hierarchies and stuff. And I just wanted to talk about one of those stories, because I think that was something that resonated with me. And it was a story with Saint Michael. And I learned this from Mother Angelica, who is the founder of EWTN. And I remember her telling the story of the great battle. And so when God created the angelic realms, like Lucifer, who's Satan, was one of he was a seraphim, actually. This is what tradition tells us. It's the tradition part of our faith. So he was the one of the highest order of angels, and he was basically, his order was music. So the angelic sounds and hymns all came from him, which is interesting, because then after he fell, now we see how music is used now, right?
Yeah.
And it can bring us closer to God or closer to darkness. But when he found out the divine plan, and that was that that Jesus would come down to save us and would be born of the Virgin Mary and be human, he wanted to be like God. Okay. And that's when he made that decision in that moment. And because the angels have free will, and in an instant they could make that decision to be with God or to not be God. When his pride got in the way and he wanted to be like God, the archangels, who were, again, if you're looking at the hierarchy and you look at it, well, they were maybe one of the lower levels, because that's when Archangel Michael, and we hear when he says his name is who is like God, he rose up from the lower levels, and he was the one that battled Satan or battled Lucifer, and the great battle took place in heaven, because all the angel forces that rose up with Michael went against Lucifer and his dominions. And then that's where the great battle took place. And it was all in an instant before that creation. So when you think about it now, and then tradition also tells us that you have the archangels that now stand at the throne of God, and that they protect the throne of God. So that was always like, that struck with me, because even as we're, teaching some of these stories of our faith to the kids, it gives you hope that it doesn't matter where you are, you can always rise up. You can always rise up and stand up for what is right. And it doesn't matter what your office is, where, who you think you are. If the angels could do it, then we can do it.
Yeah. It's been actually a great teaching tool for my kids, because who doesn't like the idea of an underdog fighting the bad guy and winning?
Correct. Right.
Yeah, but my daughter is only 4, and she is convinced that Saint Michael is her angel, her guardian angel. I'm like, well, we'll get to that. She has this very strong connection with him, and I know we're recording this about a week before Michaelmas. And so we're going to celebrate it this year. And she's very excited to get to pretend to be St. Michael for the, but she's been learning the prayers, and it's very cute to hear her in her little voice. But we've been talking a lot about St. Michael lately. Mm-hmm. And when I had read your book, and I knew that he was, the archangels were, I don't want to say lower on the totem pole, but kind of, and that Satan or Lucifer had been at the top of the hierarchy of angels, and how powerful he is. And no wonder he has maintained as much influence as he has, being as powerful of an angel as he was. But then also having, this underdog rise up, and with, if you're doing things for God, how strong you can be.
Right. And that's true. I used to, before I started kind of some of these studies, used to think, oh, well, St. Michael's too busy for me. Right. He's too busy. And with St. Muriel, the same way, these are archangels that surely have other important things to do. And there's been, the thing about it is if you have them on your heart, with all the saints, I don't know if you ever heard this, but even like when you're picking a saint for confirmation, sometimes the saint will come to you and pick you. And the angels are saints because they're in heaven. So they're any soul or spirit being in heaven is considered a saint. So when a certain saint resonates with us, or a certain archangel in that case resonates with us, it's because they are speaking to us through the Holy Spirit, through our soul. And they want to be part of our lives. And there's, I don't know how much time we have, but like even the story with, Saint Uriel was really interesting. And then, I just also wanted to touch briefly on with Donna Gelsinger and the kind of miracle what happened with that. But, so the reason why I believe that Donna Gelsinger, she is a world-renowned angel artist. Like in the 80s and 90s, she her artwork was called Heaven's Little Angels, and they were on the Bradford Exchange. Those little tree ornaments, and everywhere you could go into Walmart, you'd see her angel artwork everywhere. And my grandmother used to give me the little calendar date books from like the Salesian missions. And she used to buy me because I had 3 daughters at the time that all looked like the little angels from Donna Gelsinger's angels. So I would have the little cup, cups with the angels on them and things like that. So when I started writing this, and when I really got to the point where I wanted to do this Heaven's Angels and kind of delve into the foundation of the hierarchy of angels with Thomas Aquinas, I had looked for artists all through the years for our other, for my fiction series, which is called In Spirit, Cherubs in Training. And we tried to commission artists to capture like the essence of what inspired me, but it was always her artwork. So after all these professional, queries and letters that I sent out, I one night literally just wrote a letter to Donna Gelsinger, an email. And, said, my grandmother, inspired me with your angel artwork. And the next morning, her son, Jesse Gelsinger, who's the director of her creative licensing, called me and said, hi, this is, Jesse Gelsinger. What do you want to do? And you could have floored me, because I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it took so long, and I could have done that in the beginning. But it was amazing, because Donna's Catholic. Her first ever commissioned artwork were the Stations of the Cross. And I mean, if you just look up her work, it was just, her work is breathtaking. And she always uses, she'll use live models too for her artwork, but she's just so gifted. So when they agreed to allow me to put in a print for the first time, really use her artwork for this, I kind of went through like each of her images and saw how they would fit in with the different, the different realms and the different hierarchies and like the different explanations of the angels. And so it was neat, because it was kind of like a puzzle that was being put together, and it wasn't being put together by me at all. I definitely believe it was inspired by the Holy Spirit. But so it was just such an honor to have her artwork in it, because I felt like it will give you the visualizations of what these words are trying to say, and in the mind of the beholder, it becomes real. So I've had people say, well, okay, but angels aren't always, they are more fierce, and they are more, sometimes we have these biblical stories that they present themselves and you can't look at them because they are so magnificent. But also I heard I believe it was Father Powell said this one time, and I said, yes, this is the answer. They will appear to us through the eyes of the beholder. So if an angel is not going to come in all of its glory, if they are trying to appear to children and give comfort and recognition with them, they're going to appear as children, because that's their hope is to guide and to comfort. So they can truly appear through the eyes of the beholder. And that gave me comfort in knowing, like, even using her images to it, there's truth and there's inspiration and there's beauty, and you try to, and when you look at it, the angels don't have a gender. They're neither male or female, but they are as beautiful as the most beautiful woman and as masculine as the strongest man. So you have this, dichotomy within their essence that, again, we're trying to put words to, but it's hard to put finite words to an infinite source. So that was one of the, the things. And I just, even with this book, I just felt very honored and just blessed that Gelsinger Licensing Group, worked with me for the whole 2 years to get this book into print. And then, of course, the right before it was published, my husband, we actually moved the next month, so it took so many years. And then I had the chaos of a move right during the launch of the publication. So
easy.
As God, yeah, as God would have
stress.
it, that's what happened. No stress there.
Yeah.
But yeah. But just to kind of like, I just want to touch also on I was brought up Roman Catholic, but my dad is Byzantine Catholic, which is Eastern Catholic. And when I had learned about Saint Uriel, it was definitely something that kind of like popped into my mind as I was walking the Stations of the Cross one time, and I had come out and finished the stations, and there was a little plaque there of Padre Pio. And this little plaque, it mentioned something about like his closeness to the angels, and that, when you pray, that another angel can assist you in your journey. So I said, I wonder who that angel is. And this name Uriel popped in my mind. I had never heard of him at all in my whole life. And it sat with me for a long time. And I decided, well, I was going to try to do some research on him. And at the time I was writing the stories about the cherubs. Well, the first thing I found out was Uriel is that his name means the fire of God, and that he is the angel that when Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, that he stands at the gates of the Garden of Eden with this fiery sword with the cherubim. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen now, because I didn't even know that he existed. And so kind of like through my research and journey, I had all these like amazing little coincidences or God incidences as I was writing that kind of opened up revelation to inspire me to go more down a deeper path. And then I had gone into liturgy one day, and it was the St. John Chrysostom Byzantine Church in Columbus. And it was, we go to liturgy every Sunday. And I walked in and I talked to my pastor and I said, have you ever heard of St. Uriel? Because I knew that he was the fourth guardian angel. And in Roman Catholic Church, we revere the three guardian angels, which, are Raphael and Michael and Gabriel, and he's the fourth. And so my pastor told me, well, yes, in the Byzantine tradition, we revere Uriel. And he turned me around and I looked up, and this whole time was a stained glass window of St. Uriel above us that I had celebrated liturgy every Sunday. So yeah, that's when I try to tell people, get on this journey, because the journey is, you will never know what God has in store for you. It's pretty amazing.
That's very cool to hear that the Eastern Church. I do know that they focus or revere different some different saints than we do. So I had not heard of Uriel before, but that's so interesting that you have this other. There's more to find.
There's more to find, and the other thing is another interesting thing is you'll find him in the apocryphal text, which I didn't know really much about at the time either. But one day I was in the middle of all my writings. My dad comes home from church and goes, "Hey," he goes, I was over at the church, and it was actually a Roman Catholic church. And he said, and they were giving away these free Bibles. They said they're not using them anymore. And he puts it down on the table, and it said it was the Catholic Bible. It was the Bible, but it said with apocryphal text. So I was like, what is that? What does that mean? And of course, the first thing I opened up was the second book of Esdras, and I opened it up, it's the whole story about Archangel Uriel talking as talking to a prophet, and the prophet's asking all kinds of questions on mankind and about God, and he starts revealing some of these answers. So that was kind of like the second confirmation that there's a lot more to the story. And I believe that like they have this whole angelic realm that's going on, that's helping us. They're trying to help us along this journey, and they have messages. We just really need to open up our hearts and kind of listen. So that was one of the things in the second book of Esdras and Genesis and Matthew. There's reference to Uriel throughout biblical texts that are amazing, and it's really amazing to see some of what his stories are.
Well, then there's a whole, it just, one of the things that popped out at me is even just the names of the hierarchy of angels. I didn't, you hear thrones and dominions, like, oh, I've heard that in Mass. I had no idea what that was. But there's so much to explore, and it's such a rich, it would make sense that if God put so much effort into creating a material world that we can see, that he would do the same for a spiritual world that we can't yet.
Right.
So it is such on that other side of the veil that there's some pretty cool stuff. And your book does a great job of giving that introduction along with the artwork, which is a lot of fun to see.
Yes, it is. And it's just amazing. And that's the basic, mission or message that kind of I wanted to convey, is just, use this as an introduction and then really delve deep into it, but also from we said before in the beginning, from a catechetical basis and biblical truth, because there's so much out there, mistruths. And, I mentor some children that kind of, they have my book, and then they text me and they ask me all kinds of questions, and I'm really, cognizant and aware of how much mistruth is out there, especially with the New Age, and especially when we're talking about angels and angelic forces and naming them and things like that. There's a lot of dangerous territory to get into. So one of the things I'm really trying to do, especially with children, because they can get into situations where they're learning and researching things that are coming at them, and they think it's truth because it's on the internet. But finding the right resources and the truthful resources.
That's a really good point to make. Yes, because and that's great that you have that at the end of the book as well. At the end of Heaven's Angels, because it is so easy. We should all know by now. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Mm-hmm. And especially when even if you strolled through the spiritual section of a bookstore, there'll be a lot of pretty books about angels and messages and things. And definitely doesn't mean that just because it's in print, it's also true. So
correct.
Yeah, to have everything. I mean, it's steeped. Your work is steeped in Thomas Aquinas and the actual tradition, the approved tradition of the Catholic Church. It's very important to make sure that you're getting those right resources, because you can easily be led astray, even if you don't mean to be.
Right. And I help people. I mean, I have a lot of the social media, our website, Facebook pages and stuff, and Instagram, all of that. And I mean, if people reach out to me, I'd love to, I always start out, it's like, I do not know everything that there is to know, but I will help you on your journey. Like if you have questions or things that you want to find out and look up, I have a lot of resources to tap into, and we'll find it together. And that's one of the things, is that nobody really knows everything about, any one subject. It's hard. There's too much out there. But we can research, and I believe like that's what God wants us to do on this journey, is to just start seeking him out and coming up with questions, and he'll provide us with the right answers or the resources that, will give us and direct us in the right direction.
Yeah. It's good to ask questions, because that helps you know your faith better.
Correct.
Make sure that you're not doing it in a way just to be cynical, or you're not going to the wrong resources and getting that information. So that said, I will, in the show notes for listeners, I will put links to everything we've been talking about, and you can find Carrie and her book, and I'll put all that in so that you can reach out to Carrie if you have specific questions too.
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie, for joining me. Like I said, I don't know. I'm still learning a lot about angels. It's just, guardian angels. That's basically where that's all I knew. So, but reading your book was a really cool way to get in and understand the hierarchy a little bit better, and in a way that made a lot of sense and had beautiful pictures to go along with it. So thank you so much for joining me. And listeners, like I said, I will put everything that you need to find Carrie and her work in the show notes. And then I guess until next time, thank you for listening, everyone. Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy to understand grown-up answers, the pared down but not talked down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.